We laughed every take. It was like, I think I think it was take 18. They called Karen the Rock of Gibraltar because she was always strong. She always knew the answers. Sometimes she thought she knew the answers. And she was a friend to everyone. She was every woman. And I loved her as the role model at that time of women. And it was also a time when women over 40 on television were extraordinarily popular. And it said something to our audience about the strength of women at that time, which really was unheard of up until that point. You know, your career was over at 30. And so here I was representing a role model, a woman who was strong, a woman who was supportive, a woman with a sense of humor, a woman who was community-minded, a woman who reflected the dreams and aspirations of middle-class America and was happy with it. I know this sounds corny, but I felt an enormous responsibility representing the woman I was representing on this show. And very often I'd have to fight for her. If I felt there was a concept or idea that was going a little awry because of sensationalism or because of the soap opera aspect of the show at any given point of time, I fought for her integrity. But everybody, all the actors on our show, I must say, fought for their characters. I think it probably happens on any long-running drama where there's a bleeding of your own persona and the character, because the writers start writing toward the strengths of what you're bringing to that character. So a few times, I really had to battle it out a little bit. You know, that's when they talk about us actors as being a little naughty. The wonderful thing about our producers, David Jacobs and Michael Fileman, they understood that. They were unique, I think. There was no, even though everybody has their own ego involved in the making of the show, there was always the sense that the actors on Knots Landing were, and our thoughts and how we felt, were incorporated in the whole. Amazing when you think of it. But of course, we had relatively healthy actors, I mean, psychologically. When we did Karen's Addiction Problem was at a time when drug problems weren't really seen on the dramas as they are today. And nobody really understood what addiction was in the way we do today. At first, when they when they told me I was going to have this addiction problem to prescribed medicine, I felt very protective of my character, and I thought, no, she's a role model. She can't do this. She is the strength. She's the core. But then I thought, gee, there's a first lady, Betty Ford, who is just announced with this incredible man she was married to, giving her permission to say, you know, I've got this addiction. And I thought, whoa, this is an opportunity, really, to speak in a voice very loud and clear as to what is addiction, not just what is addiction, what is the solution, how does it affect the family, And of course, if Betty Ford, the Betty Ford, could be addicted to drugs / alcohol, then certainly Karen McKenzie could be. One of the things we were good at, I should say the producers were good at, was sometimes taking from the actor things that were going on in their life and incorporating it in some way into the show, or the actor would go to the producer writer with a concept because of something they have been going through that they found poignant or funny. Knotts did it in spades. When my own marriage was falling apart, simultaneously, we had the death of my husband, Sid Fairgate, played by Don Murray. And Karen, my character, found herself a single mom, as I was to my son David. And it was uncanny sometimes. What was transpiring, of course, psychologically, emotionally with me in my own life, and what was happening on camera. That happens very often. You know, it really does, because when you're in a long-running show, and of course we were 14 years, you go through a myriad of problems, and they have to be reflected somehow in what we call soap opera. So very often they would kind of catch up with each other. And actually, I'll tell one story. I've told this before, so some people might know it. When I was married to my husband, the ring I was married in was the ring my father gave my mother. And I had lost my parents. So after my marriage was over, I thought, okay, I'll just keep wearing my wedding ring because it's Karen. So I used my mother's wedding ring to work every day and in the show. And I was married to it on so many levels. It represented my own marriage and the end of it, and my father's love for my mother, and what I had symbolically left from their marriage. And there was an episode, it was called Letting Go on Knots Landing, where Karen goes to the cemetery to tell her husband that it was time for her to let go. And Karen, in that episode, took off her wedding ring. And that was the day that I took off my wedding ring and never wore again. Art imitating life.
I could write a whole episode of Knots, really. Wow.
What a good question. Ooh, you're good. I got to tell you, and maybe you'll pay me so much money.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, it's so nice to hear really intelligent questions. I'm serious. Because, oh my God, you don't know what we're asked, especially when we're a quote unquote soap opera. Oh my gosh. All right. You could play that at his 50th party or whatever.
Yeah, we've already missed it, but if we can use it. Sorry.
Okay. When we were good, we were very, very good. And when we were bad, we were good soap opera. Does that make any sense? Or I'll say it again, another way. When we were good, we were very, very good. And when we were bad, we were good, bad soap opera. Okay. Now I'll really answer, but I really answered it, okay? I really don't like Knots Landing being called a soap opera, and of course it was, or became it. Knots Landing started as an hour drama, self-contained stories. It was not a continuing story, and became a continuing story because of Dallas. Dallas was such an enormous success that I think the network and the producers thought, we gotta, let's do continuing drama. And I think one of the reasons that Knots Landing was such an enormous hit was, first of all, we had really wonderful actors, most of them stage trained. Most of them understood how to develop a character, to see the black and white of the character, and not just what sometimes we see in the characters written for soap opera. Not that that's bad. The actor, Bill Devane, played a character in Knots Landing, very important character in Knots Landing, that had a very shady, dark side that was seen by the people, other characters surrounding him, as exactly that, a quasi-villain. But on the other side of his character was a thoughtful, sensitive, real human being that only the audience at home saw. Which was, they actually did it with Abby also. So we had three-dimensional characters, and you don't often find three-dimensional characters in soap opera, in traditional soap opera. One of the reasons Knots Landing was so successful at the time was because we always had our finger on the pulse of what America was at any given time, and we changed when society changed. We went through five presidents: Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush. Who am I missing? Someone. But anyway, we were coming out of Reaganomics when Dynasty Dallas became this show that was about everything middle class kind of aspired or wanted to watch and see. A saga of people who could actually wear maybe tiaras. And it was all about oil and get rich. And Knots Landing wasn't about this elitist group. Knots Landing was about middle class America on any level you could find middle class. We were the neighbors who were looking over the picket fence at life and community. It's kind of like, if you want to examine America today, it's interesting, I'm just thinking of this. If you want to examine our country today with what is happening with people standing up and saying, I'm the 99%. Where's our middle class? That is why I believe Knots Landing transcended everything. And why in some ways I didn't see it as a soap opera. And certainly, and I don't mean to say that Knots Landing did not have moments in time where I went, okay, all right, you want to do that? All right. Sometimes went right into the soap, did it rather well, most times, not all the time. But, we now, in this country, it's amazing what's happening. that voices rise up. And I think one of the reasons that one of the things that I represented as Karen is loudly voiced in this speech that my character gave, as everyone calls the Pollyanna speech. And it does parallel some of the things that we're going through now in our country. What she was saying was what the audience, what the middle class audience was thinking. It was a time when Karen did the Pollyanna speech, as we call it, which David Jacobs wrote. We talked about what was happening that was enormous, and people hadn't voiced it yet on television. And that is why it becomes the speech that everybody always talked about, because she talked about the inability of her, middle-class America, putting her child and allowing her child to play out on the front lawn. Can't do it anymore. Can't send checks in the mail. Have to have alarms on my car. People should be nice, she says. Why aren't people just nice? I remember when I was a girl that we didn't lock the back door. No one did. Why would we have to lock the back? You know, someone would just come in and, you know, it'd be my Aunt Ethel with a pie. Hi, I'm here. Anybody here? I got a cherry pie. We actually, oh my goodness, I'm thinking of something. Joan Van Ark's character, Val, and Karen were best friends. And the audience did love that too, because we exemplified the girlfriends, right? And at one point of time, during the 14 years we were shooting the show, we realized that Val couldn't just come in my back door. Hi, Karen, I'm here. Where are you? Could not come in. And what it meant in terms of production, when you think about it, okay? It means someone has to knock on a door. Someone has to ring a bell. It takes time to shoot it. It takes time. Hello, the audience has to wait for something to happen before that character comes in the door. So nobody was very pleased about it. Imagine. But this was a passage of time. And we really had to contemplate these things as America was changing. Again, what I loved about the show is that we sometimes, the actors, would bring something to our writers and, you know, an idea and many times it was what actually just happened to us. So in my dressing room earlier that day, they had set out my wardrobe. And I put on this sweater and, you know, I put on the sweater and I thought, ooh, I don't remember everything being as big as it's now looking in the sweater. I mean, everything. And I thought, no, you know, I can't wear this. Anyway, someone came in my dressing room and I said, okay, let me try. Okay, put your hands under my sweater, 2 hands, and pull. Just pull. I was practically lying down. We were both standing. I was practically lying back while this person, you know, stretched this sweater. And I started laughing because I thought, how appropriate in life. When would you do that? With your girlfriend. So we told the producer writers about it, and they just put it in the scene. Now, the scene wasn't about stretching a sweater. There was a lot of other dialogue going on that was pertinent to what was going on in the show. However, it was done around the fact that these 2 ladies' best friends were stretching Karen's sweater. Okay, notice I took off my 5-carat diamond because do you know what I was doing? I started talking with my hands and I thought, this is all I have to do is talk to these people about middle-class America. You know, so I started getting in my way. I was doing, you know, this, and then I thought, okay, this, and I don't even know why I wore the damn thing. Knots Landing had a fabulous sense of humor, and the actors were able to pull it off. And that's another thing that I loved about it. Sometimes we were tongue-in-cheek. We did romantic comedy. I mean, we had fun. And so they put Karen in this situation where she never sees her husband, the lawyer, Mac. And she's complaining about the fact that, things aren't quite what they should be, birds and bees wise and things like that. And so she conjures up this thing that she's going to do and surprise him at the office. And she puts on something underneath a raincoat. And she comes into his office and voila! And of course, as she does that, some clients walk in. That was, hello, of their sense of humor. It was so fabulous that we were able to do that kind of thing. And so often, you don't have the ability to do that in traditional soap opera. Well, we know I always had a fabulous body. So I had to wear this very scanty outfit in one of the scenes that I did, and I remember the truth. I remember, because I did have a body, that none of the crew had really seen me in anything but at home jeans and the shoulder pad years when I was a businesswoman, but they didn't see Michele, me, wearing scanty clothes. I was embarrassed. When you think about it, it's really silly because of, I wasn't nude. But I do remember doing the scene, and I hesitated taking it off. It was in rehearsal. It was like, okay, now they're going to see me. Okay. There's no ending to this. I think we always had a sense of humor. And all the characters played in the show most of them had a sense of humor about them. But we were able to pull it off. Kevin Dobson, even before I was married to Mac with my first husband, played by Don Murray, Sid, we had this incredible time doing romantic comedy. You watch us. It's just, and it was so much fun rather than doing the drama all the time. And they were very talented. I'm saying they because I'm remembering the wonderful men, and I mean men, who I played opposite. They were so marvelously talented that they could pull off anything. You wanted to do comedy? Do you want to do pratfalls? Do you want to do serious drama? Do you want to do Hamlet? Do you want to? We were all over the place. I never played Hamlet, but that was not a great answer. But yeah, I said men. The reason I read men that way, Knots Landing had men. We had men. I don't know how to explain that, but it's like, obviously women watched the show, but men were really represented in a way on our show that I believe our audience kind of relaxed into it, the male counterpart to the women. They enjoyed the fact that they were men. I don't know how to say it. I will come in post and say exactly what he said. Dallas, although it was embraced, the audience was men and women, it was a man's show. It was about men. It was, Cain and Abel. It was, let's, get some drinks. Let's talk oil and business, right? And you would think Knots Landing, because of the incredible women that were on the show, would be the woman's counterpart to it. But I got to tell you something. We had strong men, strong male actors on our show that I think, you know, the men in our audience, and there were a lot, some of them were closet viewers, but they embraced our show, I believe, because of the interacting of the male in the show, and also the different kinds of relationships that they saw. The couples were all different. The wonderful thing about the actors in Knots Landing was that we would show up on the set and we would play. We would experiment. What we received from our partner in a scene, it was like a tennis match. You know, if someone hits it hard, you might want to just kind of shoot it back and let it land where it does. We were very good at that. Actually, I equate it to music because I'm a musical person. You know, there's music that sweeps you away and gets into a rhythm and a mode that that you kind of follow, like a stream running faster and faster down a mountainside. Streams don't run down a mountainside. However, in music, you know, if something is musical in acting, you know when the note falls flat. You can feel it. There's a rhythm in it. And it is like a tennis match. There's a rhythm in it. You hear it. You know, here's dialogue. Boom, ba-dum, 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 bum, ba-dum, ba-bum, bum, ba-dum, 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 ba-ba-da, ba-dum, ba-da-da-da. You don't have to pay for this. Da, 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 do, 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 da, do, da, da, do, do, da, do, 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 da, 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 da. Da 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 da.
That's the Dallas theme. Come on, you should
Oh,
do your own
okay.
theme, perhaps.
That was Dallas. There are different styles to shows. And if you look, for instance, at Dynasty, when they did things that were, you know, right on the nose comedy, we were laughing, you know, at something bigger than life. We were looking at them and laughing at, you know, the unbelievable situation. You know, there are people throwing mud at each other in a what was it, a pool or whatever they were in. You know, and it was funny. It was well done. But in Knots Landing, the audience, I think, would laugh with us. There was an identification. People embraced the characters as they would their friends. We were in their homes. We on Knots Landing, we, the characters on Knots Landing, would be home watching Dynasty in Dallas, if you want to take it literally. We'd be watching those shows for the very reason our audience were watching the shows. That was the difference between our show and theirs. And of course, you know, I think that's why they identified so much and why Knots Landing was on for 14 years. Because again, you know, bringing up Reagan in that era, you know, we went somewhere else as we, you know, continue to go. So, you know, if you put on the show Knots Landing today, it would be very, very different. I'd be, you know, in New York protesting for whatever we're protesting for. I want middle-class America. I want me. I want me back again. I want the ideals of America. I want the picket fence. I want to own a home, and I want you to stop taking money from me. But I'll pay taxes. At the time Knots Landing was in the public eye, we did something that wasn't being done. And I have to pay kudos to David Jacobs and Michael Filerman, who decided to write stories about people and the equality of all people without hitting people over the head with them and pontificating about it. Hence, we had friends who were black, next door neighbors who were black, some people in some families dated people who were black, and we didn't make mention of it. We did not talk about the fact that they were black. We didn't make a story about how can you be living next to black people and make a story about it. They just never talked about it. It just was. And because of that, CBS and Knots Landing at that time had the highest black audience, okay, for the hour drama. The highest, except for, we're not talking about sports. And when night, what was that? Oh shoot.
Not the heat of the night.
Heat of the night. Okay, so let me go back a little bit. CBS and Knots Landing had the highest rating, viewership, with African Americans at that time. And you say, why? You know, how do you explain it? It's because there was an equality that no one ever talked about. It just was. I'm not talking about the sports, which all ethnic groups watched. But when Heat of the Night came on, that was the only time that Knots Landing had, fell a little bit short of that black viewership. And of course, it was natural because, of course, Heat in the Night was right on the nose. It was about what it was, and with a black character in a southern state. I love Kevin Dobson, and I loved him while we were working together. And one of the reasons that I think we, as a couple, kind of jumped off the screen together was because we acted off camera the way we acted on camera. Kevin Dobson and Michele Lee would have fights or disagreements with each other as we would as husband and wife, with respect, always with respect. But we would get into it and everything, and then, we would go on with whatever. We'd laugh together. We'd fight for something in a scene together, for what we wanted in a scene. We respected each other, and we had fun. We had fun. I remember once. Oh God, we were bad. We did a bad thing. There was one scene once. I'm laughing because that's what we did in the scene. We got the giggles. Okay, it was so funny. The scene was so funny. It was about us and our adopted daughter Meg. And it was about us not being able to sleep. So we had Meg in bed with us, and we were this couple who were, it was like, it's your turn, man. It's your turn. It was one of those comedy scenes where who was going to get up next? Well, forget it. It was our bedroom set. We were in bed. The man who wrote the scene, Larry Kasha, and it was brilliant. It was so brilliant, it was too funny, and we couldn't do it. We laughed every take. It was like, I think it was take 18. Take 18, because we would do what, when you go, okay? It would be me, I'm sleeping, and I know I have to look, the baby's crying, and I know I have to look to my right, to my co-star, Kevin Dobson, and just look at him like, get up. Do it. So I turn and I look at him. And we would go. That would be it. I think the all-time favorite was Val's twins being abducted. And everybody can identify with that. First of all, Joan is such a good actress. And her heart and soul is always in whatever she does. So now you've got two kids, twins, who are stolen from her. She's told they're stillborn, but she, the character, saw her babies being born. And so the audience, I mean, audiences love any time there's children in peril, always. Forget it. That was a super fantastic arc. That is my favorite. Oh gosh, let me think. I'm going to look down in case I wrote notes. I don't think I did. But I mean, when I think of that, you know, we also had wonderful storylines with misuse of drug or drug addiction. Donna had one with her daughter, the character Abby. And the wonderful thing, again, and I will repeat this, is that our characters aren't black and white. Never. They're three-dimensional. So this woman, who is the femme fatale, the one that you call, she's not evil. In fact, she's not. The bad girl, okay? The girl who's a little too greedy. The girl who could run off with your husband. But when her child was in trouble, you saw a whole different side of that character. And that was the magic of these characters. They were flawed, and they told all kinds of stories. You got into the heart and soul of them. So that was another one. Another incredible time and storyline was the death of the character Laura, who was played by Constance McCashin. The reason that this storyline was so remarkable, again, is a tip of the hat to our producers. What David Jacobs decided to do was to tell this story using the actors for 2 days. The actors on our show played our characters at David Jacobs' house. We had 3 cameras during these days on all of us playing our characters, ad-libbing, and doing what we would do as our characters around the demise of Laura's character. On day 1, we did before the funeral, and on day 2, they shot the aftermath. And David Jacobs then, with all this film, wrote a 2-part episode. That was never done. This was at a time they didn't do that. You know, when ER was doing these wonderful shows with George Clooney, and they did some of the shows live, and some of those exciting things that television could do. Knots Landing had this incredible moment, I believe, in doing these very special shows. And I am telling you that from the time we got there at 10 o'clock in the morning or 9, whatever it was, till we left at 5 or whatever, there were cameras following us around. So if I, Michele, went with Joan Van Ark as our 2 characters aside, and we weren't told where to go. We could go out in the garden and just sit there, and sure enough, there'd be a camera somewhere, and we would talk as our characters about how we felt. And those 2 episodes were written around what we as actors did on those 2 days. We knew our characters so well that we improvised our characters for 2 days at David Jacobs' house. The first day was before the funeral of Laura. The second day was the aftermath of the funeral of Laura. And from this, our David Jacobs wrote this 2-parter that was extraordinary. For me, one of the important things that I was gifted with during the years on Knots Landing was the ability to learn. I had directed stage before Knots Landing, and when we did Knots Landing, I directed many of the episodes, and became a real hands-on producer on several of the movies that I did. In the 90s, I will say this proudly, I did become the first woman to produce, direct, act, and co-write a television movie, a movie for television. Barbra Streisand had done it for motion pictures. And the only reason that I'm saying it is that, boy, did we were lucky. We were able to experience so many things outside of just our work on Knots Landing during those years, because people wanted to see us. People wanted us to be affiliated in some way or shape with their network, or you know, you don't usually hear people talking about those kinds of gifts that you get along with doing something like a Knots Landing. Color Me Perfect was about a scientific experiment where they took a woman who was mentally challenged and treated her in a way to see how she would fare in the normal, everyday world, and the consequences of the experiment. Because I was young in the business and a performer in the business and successful at a certain point of time, I met some incredible people, icons. Lucille Ball, for example, okay? And we've heard so much about Lucy that there's certain things that I don't have to say about Lucille Ball because we know. But I will tell you a few things. I was there at the Kennedy Center when Lucille Ball had got her honor. And that was incredible because she did not know what she was gonna, she didn't know anything about it. She, you know, they ask you not to perform. It's the one honor where you could sit and watch this incredible television show, okay, and not be expected to do anything. I was on the plane with her on the way back from the honors. She was sitting behind me with her husband then, Gary Morton, and they laughed the whole time. They never stopped laughing, okay, behind me. And of course, her voice at that time, you know, I can't do it. That sounded like Goofy. But, all right, let me get back to the point. So Lucille Ball goes to the ladies' room, and I followed her, and I was waiting outside the restroom. And she came out, and I said, oh, my goodness, it's so clean. You know, everything was perfect. And I said, well, look at you. And she says, this is a moment in time when I'm on an airplane that I don't want God to think I'm a prima donna. She did. Is that perfect? Also, she kind of embraced me when I was a kid, okay? And of course, Lucy, her daughter Lucy, is a good friend of mine. We're very good friends. But that's when I first met little Lucy. And I mean, I would go over and watch films at the house when she was married to Gary Morton. And, you know, everyone's going to say the same thing in terms of her being this very serious person, which she was. And, you know, and she found her comedy in the physical and in what was written online. That was how she was funny. But she also asked me at a moment in time to look after her daughter. You know something, I never told Lucy this. When I say look after, it was like because I was known in the business before Lucy Arnaz was. And so it was a sweet thing, you know. Everybody identified with Lucy. I love Lucy. She was, oh my, talk about every woman with that sense of adventure and watching her to get into all of those situations, and her wonderful relationship with her husband and her girlfriend, okay? The thing is that Lucille Ball is known by everybody. I don't care how old you are, and I don't care how young you are, and I don't care what country you live in, because that show being seen every single day, everywhere in the world, at all times, brings in an icon and a show that's unimaginable. Everybody loves Lucy. And talking about politics, hello. How about when the world stopped with Lucille Ball being called a communist? How about that? The world stops. And I think Desi said something like, the only thing red about Lucy is her hair. And that's not even real.
You would know.
You see shades of Lucille Ball in every comic actress today. Tina Fey. I mean, you could go on and on and on. How do you even measure what Lucille Ball has given to our industry and to our business, women, what we do as artists? It's unimaginable. It is incredible what she has done for us. Peyton Place. I watch Peyton Place all the time. I had a crush on Ryan O'Neal. And watching, and he's wonderful. I mean, he really knows what he's doing. And of course there was, wasn't it Mia Farrow? Mia Farrow with the hair, or no hair. And that was soap opera. Hello. That was so much fun to watch. It's funny because I saw Ryan O'Neal recently, and he talked about, somebody said something about Knots Landing. We were sharing a car together. And he then said, yeah, in Peyton Place. You know, sometimes you're identified with a show and it never goes away. I don't think Ryan O'Neal, because of everything else and all the PR that he's had with women in his life and the enormous amount of work he's done, no one ever says, Peyton Place. But no matter what I have done in my career, they look at me and they say, Knots Landing. Nothing to do with anything else. All the Broadway I did in the beginning of my career, where I started, and my musical career, no, none of that. Or any of the big Disney movies, or nah, I'm not even going to tell you about that because it's way too much about me.